She thought the past was buried. Then the man who abandoned her, the father of her child, walked in as her daughter's new guardian. She was left pregnant and heartbroken. 8 years later, the man assigned as her daughter's new guardian walked in, and it was her ex-billionaire lover. The air inside the Bright Futures Mentorship Foundation was a mix of lemon polish, recycled air, and freshly brewed coffee, a scent that should have calmed Folly James but instead tied her stomach into anxious knots. She sat on a cracked leather bench beside her daughter, Aliyah, who swung her legs in rhythm, humming softly as she clutched a worn, stuffed rabbit named Clover. It was supposed to be just another introduction day, nothing more than meeting the Foundation's newest sponsor, a mentor assigned to guide gifted children from low-income homes. Folly had dressed carefully for the occasion, jeans pressed, curls pulled back, smile practiced. Then the glass door opened, and time, the years, the pain, the silence seemed to shatter like glass. Standing there was Brian Cole, the man who had once promised her forever, the same man who'd disappeared without a word when she needed him most. He looked older, now sharper, colder, but his eyes were unmistakable, deep grey, stormy with disbelief. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Folly's breath caught in her chest. Brian's confident stride faltered, and just like that, the ghost she'd buried 8 years ago was suddenly alive again, standing only a few feet away. "Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. I've missed you more than you know. It's been a difficult stretch with all the technical issues, but by God's grace, we're finally steady again. Thank you for every moment you stayed, waited, and returned. Your support is the reason this channel is still standing. Before we start, allow me to speak a quick blessing over everyone watching. To the women, may God strengthen your spirit, quiet every storm in your heart, and surround you with uncommon favor. To the men, may God guide your steps, multiply your efforts, and give you wisdom that opens doors no one can shut. And may His protection remain over each of you, wherever you are. Amen. Now, before we dive in, I need to ask you for something important. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now, not because it's routine, but because every single story I bring here is crafted for you. And when you're not subscribed, I feel like I'm telling these stories into the dark, not knowing if the very people they were meant for will ever see them. My USA family, my UK family, you are a huge part of this community. When you subscribe, you keep this channel alive. When you don't, I feel that silence. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming tomorrow. So hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Let me know you're here. Let me know I'm not talking to an empty room. Now, let's get into today's story. 8 years earlier, she'd stood in the rain outside his penthouse, holding the test in her shaking hand, believing love would be enough to bridge their worlds. She was wrong. The memory flashed like lightning, a cruel echo cutting through the sterile brightness of the mentorship office. Folly blinked hard, pushing the past down, forcing her trembling hands to still in her lap. Brian Cole was here, in the same room, breathing the same air. The man who had once sworn she was his forever, now dressed in an immaculate charcoal suit, flanked by polished confidence and quiet authority, looked utterly out of place in the cramped community office. His gaze darted between her and Aliyah, confusion flickering behind the steel-grey eyes she used to dream about. Mrs. Langford, the program coordinator, clapped her hands together, breaking the heavy silence. "Well, it's so good to have everyone together. Mr. Cole, this is Folly James and her daughter Aliyah. Folly's been with our program for years. Art teacher, volunteer, heart of gold. And Aliyah," she smiled down at the little girl, "our youngest scholar. Bright as a button. Aren't you, sweet pea?" Aliyah grinned shyly. "Mom says I just ask too many questions." Her voice, light, melodic, pulled Folly momentarily back to earth. She managed a small smile, smoothing her daughter's curls with shaking fingers. Brian's eyes softened at the sight, but his jaw clenched when Folly met his gaze. "Pleasure to meet you both," he said finally. His tone was formal, practiced, the voice of a man who'd negotiated boardroom mergers, not heartbreak. Folly swallowed the lump in her throat. "Likewise," the words scraped out dry and sharp, a fragile attempt at composure. Mrs. Langford continued, oblivious to the current swirling between them. Mr. Cole will be working with several families this quarter, mentorship sessions, school funding, exposure programs. He's been an incredible supporter of our mission. Folly barely heard her. Her heart was a drum in her chest, every beat a reminder of the years she'd spent building a life from the ashes of his absence. She focused on Aliyah, who had begun showing Brian the doodles in her notebook, bright sketches of stars, rabbits, and tiny houses surrounded by trees. She draws like that all the time, Folly murmured. Mostly after school. Brian smiled, hesitant. Genuine. She's talented. The compliment shouldn't have meant anything, but hearing his voice directed toward her daughter twisted something inside her. Aliyah looked up, eyes wide with curiosity. Aliyah, Folly hissed, mortified. Brian laughed softly, the sound startling her, the same warm laugh that once filled late nights and whispered promises. That's an interesting question, he said. I work hard. I'm lucky, so yes, I suppose I am. Aliyah grinned, satisfied. Cool. Mum says money doesn't make you better than anyone. She's right, Brian replied quietly. His gaze flicked back to Folly, something unspoken glimmering there. Regret, recognition, maybe both. It never does. Folly shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward the clock. She needed to leave before the air suffocated her, but Mrs. Langford was still talking, praising Brian's contributions, thanking him for his vision for community equity. Brian's taken personal interest in expanding the mentorship division, Mrs. Langford went on. He believes in second chances and empowering young minds. Folly's hands clenched under the table. Second chances. The irony burned. Do you two know each other? Mrs. Langford asked suddenly, cheerful and unsuspecting. You look like you might have crossed paths before. For a split second, the world tilted. Brian hesitated, his voice a fraction too slow. We've met. Folly forced a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. A long time ago. Mrs. Langford's phone buzzed, sparing them both. She excused herself with a flurry of apologies, leaving the three of them in a silence so taut it could snap. Brian's hand flexed against the table. Folly, he said quietly, his tone slipping no longer the billionaire's smooth cadence, but something rawer, unsure. But Aliyah interrupted, oblivious to the storm beneath the surface. She turned toward Brian, eyes bright. Mom, look. He has the same dimple as me when he smiles. The words hung there innocent, pure, devastating. Brian froze. Folly's breath caught. It was true. The tiny dimple that appeared when Aliyah grinned, the one she'd brushed off as coincidence for years, was mirrored perfectly on his left cheek. Color drained from her face. Brian blinked, a flicker of something close to realization crossing his features. Folly felt the room closing and the walls too tight, the air too thin. Panic clawed at her ribs. She grabbed her purse, her movement stiff, mechanical. Aliyah, she said softly but firmly, we need to go. Her daughter frowned. But now, sweetheart. Brian stood halfway, confusion and dawning understanding wrestling behind his eyes. Folly, wait. She didn't. She rose, clutching Aliyah's hand, her voice trembling but steady enough to end the moment. Thank you, Mrs. Langford, she said toward the door, though the woman wasn't even back yet. We'll be in touch about the next session. Brian took a step forward, but Folly was already walking away, her spine straight, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Aliyah looked back once innocent, curious as if sensing something she couldn't name. Brian's gaze followed them, his expression unreadable, but his fingers gripped the edge of the table like a man holding on to a truth he didn't yet understand. Outside, the late afternoon sun spilled through the windows, warm against Folly's trembling hands. She led Aliyah to the car, buckled her in, and sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. Her daughter was humming again, the tune soft and untroubled. Folly stared at the steering wheel, eyes burning. 8 years of carefully sealed pain cracked open with a single look, a single word, a single dimple. Inside, in that bright, sterile room, her past had stood up, put on a suit, and called her name. And this time, there was no running from it, but she could still try. She took a shaky breath, started the engine, and whispered under her breath, after herself, after the memory of a man who no longer existed. He doesn't get to hurt us again. Sure, here's chapter 3. The Weight of 8 Years, written in the same cinematic, emotionally rich tone as the previous chapters. Length, to 300 words. The drive home was wrapped in silence. Rain had begun to fall, soft, steady, almost merciful. Aliyah chattered from the back seat, swinging her feet, blissfully unaware of the storm behind her mother's eyes. "Mum, Mr. Bryan was nice," she said brightly. "He said I can visit the art center next week. Do you think he'll bring snacks?" Folly forced a smile into the rearview mirror. "Maybe, sweetheart." Her knuckles tightened around the steering wheel. The echo of Bryan's name felt like glass in her chest. The road blurred, replaced by a memory that never stopped hurting. The night she found out, she'd sat alone in her tiny apartment, clutching the test in trembling hands. She'd called him again and again, only to be met with silence. Each unanswered ring chipped at her hope until nothing was left but panic. Then came the knock. Victoria Coles stood in the doorway, elegant, cold, her pearls gleaming even in the dim hallway light. "You'll understand this is for the best," she said, sliding a check across the counter. "Take it and move on quietly. $100,000. Enough to buy silence. Enough to erase her." Folly stared at it for a long moment before ripping it clean in half. "I'm not for sale," she'd said. That night, she packed a single suitcase and disappeared, leaving behind the city, the skyline, and the man she'd once believed would choose love over legacy. Now, in the dim glow of her apartment, Folly traced a finger along a framed photo of baby Aliyah, the only promise she'd ever kept. Her voice was barely a whisper. "He doesn't get to hurt us again." The skyline stretched endlessly beyond Bryan's office windows, towers of glass gleaming in the pale morning light. Yet even with the city at his feet, he felt hollow. He couldn't shake her face, the shock in her eyes, the way her breath had hitched when she saw him. Folly James. The name alone stirred something raw, something he thought he'd buried 8 years ago. He leaned back in his chair, loosening his tie, the silence pressing in. "Why didn't she tell me? Why disappear, without a word?" "Lauren," he said into the intercom, voice low, "pull up everything we have on Folly James. Old emails, messages, anything from 8 years back." While his assistant's heels clicked away, memories flooded in fragments he tried to forget. Folly laughing in his kitchen, paint on her fingers from the art center, her voice promising she'd always believe in him even when he didn't, and then gone. He'd searched back then, desperate, calling, texting, showing up at her old apartment only to find it empty. His parents told him she'd moved on. His father had even shown him a photo of Folly with another man, smiling. The betrayal had crushed him. His father's voice still echoed like a scar. "You're a Cole, Bryan. You don't marry a girl from the community center." She made her choice, now make yours. He'd believed them. God help him, he'd believed every lie. A knock broke his thoughts. Lauren stepped in, hesitant, holding a slim folder. "I found this in an old private archive," she said softly. "It's addressed to you." Bryan took it, his pulse spiking as his eyes fell on the handwriting he could never forget. Folly James. 8 years ago. The paper trembled in Bryan's hands. One look at the looping script and he was back in another life, a life where Folly's laughter filled his mornings and her paint-stained fingertips brushed against his. He unfolded the letter slowly, afraid of what waited inside. "Bryan, I don't know how to reach you anymore. I've tried. Maybe this letter will find you before it's too late. I'm scared, but I need you to know I'm pregnant. I love you. I just wish you'd been here to say it back." The word struck like a blade. His breath caught, vision blurring as 8 years of confusion snapped into horrifying clarity. He hadn't been the man who walked away, he'd been the one left in the dark. A flash of memory seared through him. His father's assistant, discreetly slipping an envelope from the mail pile. The cold efficiency of wealth protecting its own. Bryan rose from his chair, rage shaking his chest. The city outside suddenly meant nothing. Every deal, every dollar, hollow. His voice was a whisper, raw and breaking. "She thought I left her. Because my family made sure she would. The knock came just after sunset. Folly froze, halfway through folding laundry, the hum of the old ceiling fan filling the silence. When she opened the door, time folded in on itself. Brian stood there, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled, eyes haunted. "Folly," he said quietly. "We need to talk." For a long moment, she couldn't move. The sight of him older, sharper, yet still carrying the same impossible warmth stole her breath. Then Aliyah appeared behind her, bright-eyed and smiling. "Mr. Brian," she squealed, running to hug his leg. "You came." Brian crouched, startled but tender. His hands trembled as he brushed a loose curl from her forehead and saw himself in her eyes. The same grey, the same stubborn light. Folly's voice hardened. "Aliyah, sweetheart, go to your room. Mummy needs to talk." When the door clicked shut, the air thickened. "You shouldn't have come," she said. "I found your letter." Her heart stuttered. "What letter?" "The one you sent 8 years ago, the one my family made sure I never saw." He told her everything, the lie, the interference. Folly's anger trembled beneath the surface. Grief fighting disbelief. "So now you show up, expecting forgiveness because your parents were cruel?" "No," he said. "I came because I should have fought harder." Silence. Then her voice cracked, soft, breaking, final. "Whether they lied or not, Brian, you weren't here. I was alone." And with that, she turned away, leaving him in the doorway between the world he'd known and the one he'd destroyed. Brian didn't sleep that night. The city lights blurred through his penthouse windows as he pored over every file, every email, every shadow of the truth. Old correspondence surfaced, intercepted messages, deleted voicemails, wire transfers to a Miss Keating, his father's assistant. A single memo sealed it all. Folly James. Matter resolved. Payment confirmed. By morning, he was shaking. He drove to his parents' estate, marble floors, cold air, the scent of control. His mother looked up from her tea as if he were still the boy she could manage. "Brian, you look dreadful." He dropped the file onto the table. "You paid her to leave." A pause, then the faintest sigh. "We did what was necessary. That girl would have ruined you." "You ruined me," he said, voice trembling. "You stole my life, my family." For the first time, Victoria Cole faltered. "It was for your protection." He turned away. "No, it was for your pride." Later that day, Folly arrived at his office, wary but curious. He didn't speak, just laid the documents out in silence. Her eyes traced the evidence, the transactions, the letter, the truth. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears welling as the enormity sank in. "All these years," she whispered. "We hated each other for nothing." Brian's jaw tightened, grief and regret threading his voice. "We lost 8 years because of them." She looked up, eyes shimmering. "Then let's not lose another." For the first time, the space between them felt less like a battlefield and more like a bridge rebuilt with pain and truth. Weeks slipped by like cautious steps on thin ice. Brian didn't demand entry into their lives, he earned it, quietly, one small gesture at a time. He showed up at Aliyah's school recital, sitting in the 3rd row, his hands trembling as she spotted him and waved. Later, he brought flowers, not extravagant roses, but a wild mix of daisies and tulips, Folly noticed. He volunteered at the community art fair where Folly taught painting to kids. When the crowd thinned, he helped her stack easels, laughing softly when streaks of blue paint stained his cufflinks. "Guess I've been promoted from boardroom to clean-up crew," he joked. Folly tried not to smile, but failed. For the first time in years, the air between them felt gentle instead of heavy. Aliyah adored him, their bond blooming naturally. He helped with her math homework, showed her how to fix her toy drone, and listened to her endless stories. Every "good job, kiddo" carried warmth Folly once thought he'd lost. Yet, late at night, when he'd gone home and silence filled the apartment, doubt still lingered. Love had burned her before. Could it ever be safe again? One evening, after walking them home from the park, Brian hesitated at her door. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said quietly. eyes steady. I'm asking for time. Folly met his gaze wary, hopeful, fragile. Time, she whispered. That I can give. And for the first time, it felt like the beginning of something real, not a return to what was lost, but a rebuilding of what could still be. The ballroom glowed with golden light crystal chandeliers, polished marble, the hum of laughter echoing through the grand space. But Brian Cole didn't see any of it. His eyes searched the crowd until they found Folly and Aliyah near the back, watching him with quiet pride. Tonight marked the end of one life and the beginning of another. Cole Global Holdings had been his family's empire, but it had also been his cage. And now, he was finally stepping out of it. When he took the stage, the murmurs hushed. Cameras flashed. His voice, steady but heavy with emotion, filled the room. I once believed success was measured by numbers, by how much power you could hold in your hands, he began. But power means nothing if it costs you truth, if it costs you love. Folly's chest tightened as he continued. So tonight, I'm walking away from Cole Global. Instead, I'm founding the Bright Futures Foundation for single mothers, for children who deserve a chance, and for the second chances that saved me. Applause thundered through the hall, but his eyes never left hers. Later, outside beneath the city lights, the noise faded. The night was cool. The skyline a glittering reminder of everything they'd survived. Folly exhaled, a breath years in the making. You really did it, she said softly. He smiled faintly. It was time. She studied him, no longer the billionaire who once vanished, but a man stripped of pretense, rebuilt through loss and love. Trust doesn't happen overnight, Brian. It's something you earn every day. He nodded, stepping closer. Then I'll keep showing up. Aliyah's laughter broke the moment as she ran toward them, her small hands clutching both of theirs. Folly looked at her daughter, then at the man beside her, the one who had once been her heartbreak, now becoming her home. And as the three of them stood together under the city glow, Folly realized the truth she'd spent 8 years avoiding. Sometimes love doesn't come back the same. It comes back stronger, scarred, but real. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out, and do well to click on the subscribe button and turn on notifications for the next story.